Welcome back to Fantasy Fights. This time we're going to look at the top 10 uncrowned heavyweight champions. These are men that should have been given either a shot or actually should have won the title. But before we get going, please subscribe, hit the like button. And here we go. Okay, the first fighter we're going to look at as uncrowned champion, number 10, is George Godfrey of Alabama, 98-21. Had a very impressive list of wins. Remember, the African-American fighters or the black fighters had to carry, in many cases, their opponents in order to get future fights. They couldn't look too good. So just keep that in mind with some of his losses and things like that. He won the colored heavyweight title on 2 different occasions. He fought in 1930 Primo Carnero and lost a 5th round. He was getting the better of the future champion, Primo Carnero, and but was disqualified for a low blow in the 5th round. The fight was fixed. Godfrey lost his license and lost half of the purse for the fight. And he was the 4th fighter to fight Carnero who lost his license following the fight. So it was a real tough situation for him. In 1935, the International Boxing Union demanded that the heavyweight champion Max Baer defend his title against Pierre Charles of Belgium. Baer refused to, instead fought Jim Braddock and, of course, lost the title. So Charles Pierre is going to defend or fight for the title against Godfrey. And Godfrey is going to win a 15-round decision, and he is going to be the IBU heavyweight champion. He did not defend the title, and eventually Braddock was recognized as the champion. At number 9 is Joe Chunkski. He was a rival of Jim Corbett in San Francisco, 1889 to 1901. Held a draw with Jim Jeffries, knocked out Jack Johnson, defeated the original George Godfrey, defeated Bob Fitzsimmons, fought a draw with Tom Sharkey and Kid McCoy. He just never really got a shot at the title. Probably, he came along at a bad time when the champions just did not defend their title. He was never given a crack. At number 8, the uncrowned champion, Jimmy Bivens, actually came to prominence during the war and just had a bevy of people that he beat. Tammy Mariello, Ezra Charles, Archie Moore, Bob Pasteur, Joey Maxim, Lee Savoy. I mean, he beat everybody during that period from 1942 to 1945. 5'9", 177, 26-0. Now, you say, well, if he was so good, why didn't he get a crack at the title? Joe Louis was in the military at the time. And so he was labeled the champion, what they called the duration belt. He's actually given that title. He never got to fight for the title. He did fight Joe Louis years later, lost a very close decision when Joe was well past his prime and Jimmy Bivens was past his prime. Bivens was an exceptional fighter, had a 79-inch reach, and only stood 5'9". At number 7, Fred Fulton of Minnesota, number 7. Had a really long career. He was 6'6.5", weighed 209 pounds, had an 84-inch reach. And from 1913 to 1918, he was 45-2 with 4 disqualifications. Just an incredible record, a litany of people that he beat. You say, well, why wasn't he given a crack at the title? Well, in 13, 14, and 15, Jack Johnson was in Europe, and he held the title. Then Jess Willard got the title in 15, and in 1916, Willard was going to defend his title. He fought a 3-round exhibition against Fulton, and Fulton just had put him down and pulverized him. It looked like Fulton was going to get a shot at the title. They thought better of it. In 1916, Jess Willard defended his title against Frank Moran and skipped over Fred Fulton. Fulton was still the top contender, looked like he'd be the next champion, beat Sam Langford, just a litany of people that he defeated. Of course, Langford was past his prime when he beat him. Then in 1918, he took on kind of a guy that came out of nowhere, Jack Dempsey, and Dempsey knocked him out in the first round, got the shot at Jess Willard in 1919, and won the title. And Fred Fulton's career went up into the 1920s, but he was never the same. At number 6 is Jimmy Young from Philadelphia. In 1975, 76, and 77, the 3 best fighters in the world were George Foreman, Muhammad Ali, and Ken Norton. In 1975, Jimmy Young lost a very controversial decision, 15 rounds, to Muhammad Ali for the heavyweight championship. He then was given an opportunity against Ken Norton to fight for the WBC title, and he lost a split decision, very controversial, in 1977. He then fought George Foreman, the number 1 contender, and defeated him in a 12-round decision. So all 3 fights, he won 1 of the 3, and the other 2 are extremely close. He could have won either one of them, and he could have been the heavyweight champion of the world easily. He had wins over Ron Lyle, Ernie Shavers, and he was a defensive genius. At number 5 is Joe Gianetti from New Jersey. You can see his record, 120, 24, and 21. From 1904 to 1915, he was one of the best fighters in the world. He was African-American. He was never going to get a shot at the title. Jack Johnson held the title and wanted no part of Joe Gianetti. So he's another one of these great African-American fighters during this period of time that really had to take the short end of purses and also did not want to look too good, especially against the white fighters. They fought series after series after series against one another. Sam McVey, Sam Langford, and Harry Wills, all these guys. And if you watch video of it, it looks like they're going slow motion. Well, why beat the hell out of each other? There's just no reason for it because you're going to be fighting them in another city next week. Anyway, that was the world that they lived in. They were never going to be given the shot at the title. Gianetti was the world-colored heavyweight champion on 2 different occasions. Coming in at number 4 is Sam McVey out of Cuba. He was just an incredible fighter. Just like Gianetti and Jack Johnson, they fought each other, series of fights, battling Jim Johnson, Denver Ed Martin. All these guys fought each other constantly. McVey was a little bit larger than the other fighters. From 1907 to 1918, he was one of the best in the world. Most of his fights took place in Australia or Paris. And he fought a jiu-jitsu man in Paris. The man was from Japan, and he knocked him out within 10 seconds. McVey had a tragic death. He was penniless at the age of 37 in New York City in 1921, died of pneumonia. Jack Johnson paid for his funeral. In one of the greatest fights ever, McVey fought Joe Gianetti in Paris for 50 rounds. And it goes down in history as definitely the best fight of that period. At number 3, the uncrowned champion is Harry Wills from Harlem. He ended up being quite a wealthy man in his later years, bought up a lot of real estate there in Harlem through his career. From 1917 to 1926, he was undefeated. He was 50-1, and that was a disqualification. That was a 9-year period. Jack Dempsey was the champion the majority of that time and would not face Harry Wills, drew the color line. Wills came on late after Sam Langford, Sam McVey, and Joe Gianetti were pretty much on their decline, although he did fight Sam Langford 22 times. Remember, you had to fight the same fighters over and over again. He was just a dominant force. He was 6'2", 210 pounds, just an outstanding fighter. Finally, late stages when it looked like he might get a crack at it, he was actually past his prime. Coming in at number 2, uncrowned champion, is Peter Jackson. Jackson had fought his 61-round draw with James J. Corbett in 1891. He was a remarkable fighter. He had fallen out of a carriage earlier in the week and pretty much was limping the last few rounds. Corbett, who eventually became the heavyweight champion of the world, said there was nobody who could defeat Peter Jackson. And Slavin later said of Jackson, he was unbeatable. Jackson toured with Joe Chunkski, and Corbett said that Chunkski couldn't lay a glove on Jackson. He was just a remarkable fighter. It's unfortunate that we don't have any type of footage on him. Heavyweight champion Bob Fitzsimmons later called Jackson the greatest fighter who ever breathed and refused to meet him in an official fight. And years later, after was past his prime, he'd taken off about 3 or 4 years. He lost to Jim Jeffries, pretty much just a shell of himself at the time. And he died of tuberculosis in 1901 in Australia. Remarkable fighter. Nat Fletcher, the original publisher of the Ring magazine, said Jackson was regarded as the greatest fighter of that era. John L. Sullivan, the heavyweight champion at the time, drew the color line. That's why Peter Jackson was never given an opportunity to fight for the championship. Holding down the top spot as the uncrowned champion, Sam Langford, the legend, the Boston Tar Baby. His credentials are just, there's too many of them to list. It'd be talking for hours. He was roughly in his prime from 1910 to 1918. Of course, that was the time that Jack Johnson was the champion and lived in exile in Europe. Jack Johnson was not going to fight him. He was not very big. He's like 5'6.5", 185 pounds. He had a 314 career wins. Fights, and the last years of his life that he fought, he was blind in one eye, and of course he eventually went totally blind. He was incredible. Never got a chance at any title. He fought from lightweight all the way up to heavyweight. And most of the time, the fights that he did lose, he lost intentionally. I hope you enjoyed this look back on the uncrowned champions, and I think most of you would agree that the racial differences of the time were the reasons these men were not given opportunities. Hope you enjoyed it. Please hit the like, comment, share, and please subscribe. Have a great day.